Hello everybody, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave with an XRP update for you. I'm in Cartagena, Colombia, just for a couple of days, and I forgot to bring my Rode microphone, so I'm using my Apple AirPods. I hope this quality of the sound is going to be good enough. I do apologise if it's not. This is the best I can do today, and I thought you'd want an update. Elliott Wave first, classic technical analysis last. Very quickly at the monthly time frame with a full data set of all the data for XRP. My Elliott Wave count begins in July 2014 from this low to this high. This is a fairly good looking 5-wave impulse. Why is that not snapped on the end? There we go. 1, zigzag for 2, 3, triangle for 4 and a 5th wave. Note that the 5th wave is actually a lot longer than the 3rd wave. That's because this is on a semi-log scale. It doesn't look as long. Now I've got these notations here. The 5th wave is 8.44 times the length of the 3rd wave. That's an important point to note because that's really common for commodities and cryptocurrencies for the 5th wave of an impulse to be the longest, strongest portion. This 5th wave moves a lot further in terms of price and potential profit than the 3rd wave does, and it does it in a fraction of the time. This is the strongest portion of the impulse. I am expecting to see that again at the end of primary 3 and especially at the end of cycle 3. So for the XRP that I bought back in 2019, I'm hanging on probably for the end of cycle 3, but at least for the end of primary 3, depending on where it gets to and how old I am when it gets there. It really is taking its time, and I'm getting a bit old now, so I'm kind of hoping another couple of years at the most. Cycle wave 3 may only subdivide as an impulse, so we've got cycle 1, impulse, cycle 2, double zigzag, cycle 3, an impulse will be labelled primary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it has to meet all of the core Elliott Wave rules for that structure. And the target for primary 3 is using the ratio 14.72. That is not a Fibonacci ratio. That is the length of primary 3 to primary 1. Within cycle 1, if we see that relationship again here, within cycle 3, then primary 3 may end at 27.44. If that target is wrong, it may not be high enough though, because primary 3 within cycle 3 may be a longer and stronger extension than primary 3 within cycle 1, because I would expect 3 itself to be a very long, strong, extended wave, a lot longer than wave 1. Primary 3 may only subdivide as an impulse. That'll be labelled intermediate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think this is far enough for the end of intermediate wave 3 yet. Let's have a look at this at the daily, weekly time frame. I think we're going to go from the low of intermediate 2. No, we're having a look at intermediate 1 and the entirety of intermediate 2. I've labelled intermediate 2 as a triple zigzag because that's how it subdivides best, and I've eliminated all other possible structures. This wave count subdivides the best and it meets all Elliott Wave rules and it has a decent look. So intermediate 2 a triple zigzag, an unusual structure but not too rare. And now within primary wave 3, I expect intermediate 3 is incomplete. This is not long enough for intermediate 3 and intermediate 4 to be unfolding, and so I expect intermediate 3 is incomplete. This just hasn't moved far enough beyond the end of intermediate wave 1, and I expect intermediate 3 within primary 3, within cycle 3, to be a really long, strong extension. So this is just not long enough. That is a really, really bullish statement. XRP, my wave count, is extremely bullish for the long term. Intermediate 3 within primary 3 within cycle 3, if you know your Elliott Wave degrees, that is a very, very bullish statement. Within intermediate 3, I have minor wave 1 complete up here and minor wave 2 completing lower as an expanded flat. Let's have a look and see how it may be unfolding. Now, it could be complete there, but it would be a running flat. B moves beyond the start of A. B is a 110.1% correction of A. When wave A subdivides as a 3, and B subdivides as a 3 and B is 105% or longer than A, then you're looking at most likely an expanded flat, possibly also a running flat, but expanded flats are really common structures, whereas running flats are extremely rare. So the probability of minor 2 subdividing as an expanded flat is very high. What that tells you is that C is extremely likely to move beyond the end of A if I've got the wave count at this point correct, which means that downward movement for XRP is most likely not over, and we expect a new low below 1.6120, at least by a little bit, or at least at that point, to avoid a truncation and avoid a very, very rare running flat. Let's look at how C may be subdividing. This high here is this high here. C must subdivide as a 5-wave motive structure, so that will be labelled green minuet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 may only subdivide as an impulse. That's labelled subminuet or orange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to unfold lower. 5 to move beyond the end of 3 to avoid a truncation, and remember C to move beyond the end of A. When I have the ends of 3 and 4, I use minuet degree to calculate a final target down for my minute wave C. At that stage I'll be able to calculate target ranges at 3 degrees, and hopefully I'll give you a small range. For now, just expect C to move below the end of A, or at least to the same point as A at the bare minimum. Within the impulse of minuet 3, subminuet 4 may not move into wave 1 price territory, and when it arrives, minuet 4 may not move into minuet wave 1 price territory above 2.7280. Let's have a look now at some technicals, just weekly and daily. At the weekly time frame, we had a descending triangle here. The breakout was downward. The target from the triangle was met, and now the lower edge of the triangle provided resistance about 2.7. So price is currently for the last few weeks moving sideways with resistance at 2.7 and support 1.8 to 1.9. Look for a breakout of this range. My Elliott Wave analysis expects a downward breakout for a short term, a little bit more downward movement before the low is found. For the very short term, the volume profile is bearish with strongest weeks on downward weeks. The last couple of signals given from on-balance volume were bearish, a break below the support line, a back test of resistance, and now moving down and away. This is too steep to bother trying to draw trend lines along these and look for a signal. The trend lines would just have too steep a slope, and so a very low technical significance would be a little bit misleading. So no new decent range for on-balance volume, so we can't use that for an upcoming signal, unfortunately. It is making lows prior to price though, so it is bearish, supporting my Elliott Wave count. ADX at the weekly time frame tells us there is a downward trend, which is not extreme. This also supports the Elliott Wave count. RSI is not oversold, and nor is money flow. So expect the downward trend may continue further until conditions reach oversold and or ADX reaches extreme territory. This is the all-time high. July 18th, 3.665. After that, we saw a bearish engulfing candlestick pattern. Conditions were extreme, RSI and money flow were overbought, and ADX indicated a very extreme upward trend. So it's unsurprising we're getting some downward movement to relieve those extreme conditions. This is now technically a bear market. That was achieved at 2.932 when price had affected a 20% reduction in market value from the high. That is the technical definition of a bear market. So that's been achieved. So XRP is in a bear market. There is a downward trend indicated at the weekly time frame. Expect that downward trend is likely to continue until we see some bullishness, until we see some oversold conditions and perhaps some bullish divergence and maybe some bullish candlestick reversal patterns. After this little bit of downward movement here, we have a bullish engulfing candlestick pattern, a little bit of a bounce. I should label this as a dark cloud cover. We have note that we saw a golden cross pretty much just about a few days after the all-time high. A golden cross and a death cross are really lagging indicators. Use them as a late confirmatory tool. Don't use them as any strong signal at all because they tend to be very, very late, because this is a 50-day moving average, that's the purple, crossing over the green 200-day moving average. 50 and 200 days based on averages of past data, obviously lagging indicators because they're based on averages of past data. That's how that works. We have very recently a death cross. Despite the name, I wouldn't read too much into it, but I am still expecting most likely more downward movement. The moving average situation is now very, very strongly bearish. The yellow 13-day short-term moving average is below the purple 50-day is below the green 200-day. The short and mid-term are both negatively sloped. The long-term is positively sloped, and price is below all three. This is a strongly bearish look for the moving averages. Again, these are lagging indicators. Price is currently moving sideways, essentially with resistance about 2.65 and support about 2.05. For the short term, stronger sessions are on downward sessions. The volume profile at daily and weekly time frames is both bearish. The last signal given from on-balance volume is bearish as it makes new lows prior to price and moves back below the purple support line, now providing resistance, but it's not a perfect line. There's an overshoot here, and then on-balance volume moved back below it, so This line has weak technical significance now. ADX is declining at the daily time frame while price consolidates within the larger downward trend. There is now some bullish divergence after RSI reached oversold at the daily time frame. The close here for the 10th of October is 2.374. The close here for the 4th of November is 2.205. Price is closed lower, but RSI has made a higher pivot. This divergence is bullish, indicating weakness and downward movement. This suggests the downward movement could possibly be over. My Elliott Wave count could possibly be wrong, or we could yet see RSI develop double bullish divergence before the low is finally in. And there's longer term bullish divergence between price and money flow, also suggesting the low possibly could be in. But again, this is only at the daily time frame. That divergence could develop further before the final low is in. And it comes in the context of ADX indicating the downward trend reached extreme, but not very extreme. It reaches extreme when the black ADX line is above both the DX lines, very extreme when the black ADX line is above 50, and both DX lines when both those conditions are met. So it hasn't reached very extreme yet. There is further room for downward movement to continue. While price moves lower, ATR increases. While price moves sideways and a little bit higher, the increase in ATR slows down, and then price moves sideways and ATR strongly declines, until again price moves lower and ATR starts to increase. So both volume and volatility currently are favouring the downside. I will expect the downside is most likely to continue for XRP until we see ADX reach extreme. We may see RSI and money flow exhibit double bullish divergence, and we see conditions become extreme at the weekly time frame. So there is still further room for this downward trend to continue, and that fits the Elliott Wave count. So unfortunately, I don't think the bear market is over quite yet for XRP. I'm not seeing any strength up off lows yet, and I want to see that before I call the bear market over for XRP. That's it from me today from Cartagena. I'll be going back to Panama City. I'm in Panama for about a month at the moment, and then I'm going back to London for Christmas. So if any of you are in London and would like to catch up with me sometime in December, use the contact form on our website, pureelliottwave.com. I'll get your email and then we can organise to catch up. I'd love to meet you.